Actually, we were quite stunned because we saw that while they were already active in some load balancing markets, this whole market was very big and there was a lot more potential to actually unlock. So basically what does load balancing mean is there's different levels of basically you're helping with your flexible load to stabilize energy grids. And there are incentive structures from grid operators in place that pay flexible consumers or also flexible producers to be able to ramp up or down the energy production or consumption at a certain level of time. And there are basically 12 programs that globally, it's everywhere it's different, but it's also very similar. So in general, there are different programs that have different requirements in terms of reaction speed, in terms of accuracy, in terms of being able to hold a certain degree of energy consumption over a certain level of time. And we thought, okay, let's see how many of these programs we can actually comply to with ASICs. And over the last 2 years, we managed to actually even meet the fastest fast frequency response programs, which have a response time requirement of 0.7 seconds, so that the signal gets to the miner. The miner is basically shutting off. And this has unlocked basically a completely new revenue stream for Bitcoin miners because grid operators pay the energy consumer for the ability to ramp up and down very fast. And yeah, that's the basic concept. And this concept exists in a lot of European markets. It also exists in the US. There is already load balancing happening. Mostly, I would say, on the secondary and tertiary reserve markets. It's a lot of lingo in Pennsylvania, PJM. And basically, we are here now. And for us, this opportunity has really changed our thinking, how we think about Bitcoin mining, because we are now mainly looking into Bitcoin as a flexible asset with Bitcoin as a side product, where the key product is the flexibility that we bring to the energy grids.
And if you're breaking down a revenue stream of, let's say, an ASIC or a megawatt, what percentage is coming from this new market that you've unlocked with, 0.07 seconds, guys? That is so fast. You guys are on the cutting edge of development of this technology. And what does this do to the economics, especially in Europe?
Yeah, and this cutting edge is pretty nice because it was a bit like in Formula One, right? So we looked into, okay, what are all of the different aspects of the farm that basically slows down the signal and strip them out. And we just made sure that like a little bit in also high frequency trading, it is as fast as possible. And we can really be from the power meter, it measures the grid frequency, which gives us a signal to the miner that basically reaction time is so fast as required. So that process has been quite interesting. Also, as you probably know, that some miners, they have restrictions and they have some safety mechanism in place. So let's say that we have also had to circumvent some of these. So that's also quite a nice R&D process. But your key question was actually about the economics. The consultant in me will always tell you it depends.
Of course.
It really depends on the specific market, on the specific incentive system. So it's really different everywhere in the world. Also within Europe, within US, even within Sweden, where we are mostly today, there's 4 different zones where the pricing is different. But in general, it's a auction-based pricing for different types of programs where you national or the grid operator in a specific region, they say, okay, they need for a certain day, they expect to need this volume of flexibility in one particular program, and then people start bidding on it. And the great thing is that actually miners are the best flexibility asset there is today. Convinced about this. So miners have like the lowest, they are always in the market because if they want to participate in some progress, and some program, they can always take it. And our specific value add that we also bring is that we can select the best program. So sometimes how it actually works is that a program that people probably know also is that you're online, you're up and running, and you're being paid that the grid operator can actually turn you down. So he can say, okay, now you need to shut down within the next couple of seconds. And then this is basically an automatic program that shuts you off. How the economics work is that in such cases, obviously, you get your Bitcoin mining revenue and you get an additional benefit for the ability to turn off. And then you have to pay your electricity bills and stuff. So that gives you a certain gross profit. What is interesting, what we are now mostly focusing on are the programs that are working the other way around. So our miners right now are actually off most of the time. We are being paid, but we are being paid for the ability to ramp up very fast. And what that actually means on the economics is that you are being paid for basically for doing nothing. But sometimes you need to be very fast in activating them. On a gross profit, then obviously measured in fiat, because you don't produce any Bitcoin, that is oftentimes actually better than being up and running and just turning off. But the great ability now for us as an energy, that's why I'm saying we are looking more in the flexibility side and we are less thinking about Bitcoin, is that we are basically profitable in both scenarios. If energy prices are relatively low, we can participate in the programs that are paying us for being up and running to shut down. If energy prices are higher, we participate in the programs where we are being paid for being on the sideline and being ready to return on. And this is the true flexibility and the true ability for load balancing that we bring to the market, which is a completely different mindset, but it really is the best. It brings the most effect and the best benefits to energy grids. And it really is the biggest strength for Bitcoin mining. Yeah.
And this is why Bitcoin mining is such an onion. When you peel it, you start to learn more and more about this technology that pays you for being on, but also being off. And you don't need to go find a customer because you just connect to the energy market, but also the Bitcoin market, which is always paying effectively sats or dollars to you for being on and securing it. But at the same time, you're also saying, let me flip it on its head and secure the energy market as well. Let me secure the power. And that's something where, is that only really Sweden, the larger parts of Europe? Is that also in America? Can you talk to me where this dual-sided market approach is? Because most people understand, oh yeah, I'm running power, I turn off my power, I pay less for the energy because it's expensive. Yeah. But what you're saying is the power is expensive and I'm going to turn on, but I'm going to get paid way more than if I was off.
Exactly. I'm going to turn on and get basically an additional revenue. I'm going to get paid additionally because the grid operator is allowed to turn me off, right? For a brief moment of time. So that equation, these programs, and this is something where I must admit that unfortunately, also, I'm not already fully in all of the markets, right? So we are really, these markets have always very much specifics and we are experts already in Sweden, Norway, and Finland, but we are really now also diving deeper into other markets and we are looking into, in US, we are very much focusing on ERCOT and PJM because they have the so-called Reg A, Regulation A markets, which are very similar. So we are now already having first discussions with the local players to see, okay, can we enroll them there? What else can we bring them in terms of flexibility? How is our product enhancing their flexibility even more? Yeah. So that's basically the distribution. But you asked me before also about the economics and the pricing. And what I wanted to share with you is basically how in the last couple of days, for example, you said that Bitcoin is like an onion. So in Sweden, we have the situation right now that there is a lot of water in the hydro system. So flexibility and grid stabilization in Sweden very much depends on hydro dams because you can imagine that whenever there's like too little production or there's too much energy in the system, they use the hydro dams to pump water from bottom to top. So basically they fill the reservoirs. Now the whole winter was very bad. So all of these reservoirs are full. So these hydro dams, they have a very limited ability to react on times when they actually need to take energy out of the system. And that means that the markets, the energy grid, the grid operator wants flexible demand to be actually offline, but ready to take energy from the system if they needed to. So what happens for us at the moment in Flexionics is that we are basically being paid for being offline. However, we are getting a lot of activation signals, and which means that we are being turned on, and then the grid operator pays us additionally. Basically, we are being turned on at negative electricity prices. So the grid operator pays us additionally to take energy off the market. And then additionally, we have Bitcoin mining revenues because we are on and running. So that stacks our revenue
three times.
Three revenue streams, which I think is basically something that is quite unique worldwide. So we're quite happy about that. And it's obviously, it's not a situation that is there all the time, but with our flexibility, we are able to profit from that and we are able to monetize it whenever it's there.
And this is just from someone on the outside. They hear Bitcoin mining uses a lot of energy and that's it. But what they don't understand is that energy is like water. And if you don't have a place for it to go, it can destroy the electric grid because it is so powerful.
Exactly. I mean, as we have seen in Spain, where we had a huge outage, a huge blackout of the whole Iberian Peninsula just a few weeks ago. It's still not 100% clear like how exactly it happened, but there was a lot of renewable energy in the system when the outage happened, and it's likely to be interconnected there. So as you exactly say, like it's like water, like you need to, the best thing for really enabling the energy transition and having more renewable energy producers like solar and wind there, which have a very intermittent nature, is to also balance that on the demand side with flexible demand. And Bitcoin is the perfect flexible demand.
So now let's talk about the real technical issues with doing this. We don't need to dive in maybe into the secret sauce or the how you got from frequency trading to meter. And, I'm guessing you got a long fiber cable from the meter directly into the miner, perfectly across the ground in a perfect straight line. But for real, the degradation of the ASICs, turning on and off, hash boards breaking, is that a problem? Are you using hydro cooling, air cooling? Does it work with S9s? Are you guys S19s, S21s? Like, where do we sit in the stack? And what percentage is going down every time every day? Or is it similar to running a normal Bitcoin mine in the same degradation?
So it is more maintenance intensive than just being on and running all the time. So today, actually, in fact, the most data centers that we manage and also Flexionics, we have about different types of S19s, and we have them air cooled. So obviously in Sweden also there's not such a big difference in the temperature, so that's okay. And we can see that basically turning them on and off and on fairly frequently. We basically cycle a few times per day. Definitely requires us to have basically a more rebooting, a bit more attention. We haven't seen so much increasing failure rates on hashboards so far. I mean, obviously in the testing sometimes we broke something in the testing, which wasn't great, but you need to basically also find your boundary.